welcome back to the biz. I have Bobby Hackney today, who is probably one of my favorite bands that I think I've ever seen, Rough Francis. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Sal.
Yeah, for sure. How's things in Vermont?
Things are, they're cool. It's the weather's really nice. So there's a lot of people are out on their bikes and the skateboards.
Yeah.
But it's funny because there's still a pandemic happening.
It really is.
So I don't know. I've been forgetting that there's a pandemic happening because of the weather.
Yeah.
The weather's been so nice and doing the socially distanced hangouts.
Right.
But you forget, you're like, whoa, there's a pandemic happening.
Yeah. I will often make it to my driveway in my car and I'm like, oh, what the fuck am I doing? I forgot my mask. And I have to go back in and get my mask.
Yeah. I know I have so many masks in my van and I've done that too. I'll go to the store and just get out of the van. I'm like, wait a second, I got to put my mask on.
Right.
Yeah. Just little things. I was hanging out with my buddy the other day and it's yeah, man, you want to smoke some weed? Sure. It's oh yeah, we can't share a pipe right now. Damn it.
Yeah, all these things. It's crazy because I went to a record store the other day because they were open and I was like, I think it'll be fine. There's usually not too many people in there anyway. And it was just me and one other person. But I was walking by all these restaurants and everyone was outside eating. And I was like, I just don't think I will ever feel comfortable eating at a restaurant, even if it's outside, if the person serving me is in all full protective gear. I just won't feel okay about that.
I know, man.
But I guess those are the reminders to let you know that there is a pandemic outside.
Yeah man.
Rough Francis released a new record during this. And I can only imagine that releasing a new record, one, during a pandemic, and two, during a Black Lives Matter really protest and movement happening. How does it feel to be in both of those things while releasing a new record?
Well, yeah, it was when the pandemic was holding strong. We were just we had this album that we were sitting on and we were trying to plan out when we could release it, and then we started to realize that it's probably going to be a little while before live shows can happen, right, before all that stuff can happen again. So we decided to just do a digital release because we noticed that a lot of people were just sitting around and they're on their phones, on their computers.
Yeah, kind of a perfect time to release something.
Yeah, so it was a perfect time to grab people's attention. And then with all the all the racial stuff, all the stuff that's happening right now with the country, I mean, it's always been there.
Right.
Our system is built on racism. And, I feel I've always written lyrics about that subject. And, every time we play a show, we always use it as an opportunity to speak out about how we're feeling about being in America and being Black.
Right. Right.
And it's funny because we've been singing about this ever since we started the band, and a lot of my lyrics touch on this topic a lot. I sing about this a lot, and it's I feel some people will take a deep dive and actually pay attention and look at what I'm saying and understand what I'm saying, and then other people might not even notice it.
Right.
But I feel at this point now, people are finally tuning in and finally trying to wrap their head around what this all means and what these truths are, and a lot of white, well-meaning white people who want to be anti-racist, it's the magnifying glass is on them now, because it's we know that they want to, be anti-racist, but that also takes a lot of work.
Yes.
It takes work. You have to look inward. You have to make some life changes. You have to really work at it for it to make some actual real change. And I think a lot of people are starting to get to that point where they're thinking more about like, oh yeah, it's just more being anti-racist is more than wearing that cool fishbone t-shirt.
Right.
I
Exactly.
gotta like
Exactly.
do other things, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like
I mean, I do wish more people would wear fishbone t-shirts.
yeah, I know. Yeah. Fishbone t-shirt should be number one, and then
But it's interesting because like you bring up Fishbone, but that's one of my favorite bands, and I remember watching that documentary about them and them talking about how they felt like being a black band that was playing rock and roll was not okay because like Sony was like, how do we even market this? Like, what do we do? Like, we already have like Living Color and we're pushing their record. Like, how do we push your record too? We can't have two black rock bands and things like that, which is so crazy that even a band that is like that talented, that big, would have to like put up with this bullshit on a national level being on a major label. And
yeah, and it's like rock and roll, like when you go get down to it, rock and roll is a black form of music. Like it's really
Right.
funny that like, I mean, in my world, I see like I would see it the opposite way. Like if a white band wanted to be rock and roll, it's like, oh man, like we can't have two white rock and roll
Right.
bands.
It's so
Like,
wild. It's so wild to me because like in other things, like I always say where I've watched that the CBGB's Bad Brains document, just the live show of them at CBGB's from the 80s, but you watch it and you're like, there's white kids and black kids and just like they're just losing their minds to this, and I'm like, this is really where it started. Like there should have been like hundreds of more black rock bands and hardcore bands that came out of that, because that's where that's for me, that's the roots of it.
Totally. I know. I remember when I first saw those videos, it blew my mind because I remember seeing like even their earlier footage from when they first moved to I don't know if they like moved to New York. Well, maybe they didn't yet, but like it was like when they didn't have dreadlocks, they were like all short haired.
Yeah.
Just like what they did at that time was like so ahead of their time.
Right. And, totally
crazy. And, I was just like, whoa.
And I love that it wasn't even thought like ahead of time like this is what they were like kind of going for a sound. I remember seeing a interview with Gerald Jennifer, and they're like, why did you guys play so fast? And he was like, I don't fucking know why Earl was playing that fast. Maybe he just wanted to get the show over with and go talk to someone afterwards. Like,
I think that's what it was. I heard that like Earl was like, when there was a gig that there was like some girl that he wanted to talk to at the and he played the songs extra fast so he could be done with the set and talk to her,
which is so amazing. It's just like it wasn't even this thought of thing. Like, where did hardcore come from? Well, this dude just wanted to get the show over with.
Yeah, it's so fun.
So you've been playing music for a really long time. You played drums in the band called Static Age, right? Like a long time ago. And your dad and your uncles played in Death. At what point, throughout your whole like kind of musical like history, did you realize that like things would be a little bit different for you being black?
I mean, I knew it right away, especially when, because I grew up in this town called Jericho. It's in Vermont, and it's white. Like I was the diversity for a little while. Like the diversity was me.
Right.
Like we were the diversity. So obviously, the only choices I had were white kids to be friends with. They were there, and the ones that were nice to me were my friends.
Right.
So like I just became friends, and my friends are white. And then, so a lot of them got into skateboarding. So I got into skateboarding too. And then some of them got into punk, and I got into punk too. So like, it was kind of like this step-by-step like process of like getting introduced to punk. And then once I got into punk, I got into hardcore, and I started going to shows, and I started playing in bands because I was playing drums. I started playing drums when I was 13 years old in bands. The first band I was in was like a cover band for, we were like in 8th grade, and we'd play like lunch period.
Nice.
Like we'd do a bunch of covers, and they weren't that great, but that was it was kind of like, I played drums. My best friend had a bass, so he played the bass. And, the guitar player is like, oh yeah, I have a guitar. I guess I'll play the guitar. It was put together like that. So that's how I got into playing music with other people. And then like that also like coincided with me skateboarding, like getting into punk, going to shows. And then I wanted to be in punk bands.
Right.
And then once I started like playing in punk bands, that's when I was like fully transformed as like, a black punk kid.
Right. Right. And,
Yeah.
I imagine through like, being in high school and playing those shows, I would expect being in Vermont would be pretty accepting. And like, I know for me, I was kind of like the only, like me and my brother were like the only Hispanic kids that liked playing punk rock music, like we weren't into like reggaeton or any of that shit back then. Now we're like, it's pretty cool. But like at the time in high school, we were just like, yeah, fuck that. It's just like not what we were into. And, I remember like never really feeling like left out until someone made a point to be like, yeah, I don't see really like, Spanish kids playing like punk rock. And I'd be like, oh, now I'm aware of it, but I never thought of it before,
Because I was super aware. Like actually, the first time I went to a show, I was super scared because with my friend, she brought me to the show at 242.
Mm-hmm.
It was my first time, and we went to go see this band called Big Mistake. Ever heard of them?
Yeah. Where are they from?
They're from Connecticut, somewhere in Connecticut.
Yeah, they were like a hardcore band, I think.
Yeah, and they had like horns. And there was this other band that opened up called Jesus Nut, and that band later became good friends of like my best friends. They were the local band.
Nice.
And I just remember being like near the door because I saw like these people, like that was back when industrial was pretty big too.
Sure.
And there was a lot of crossover with like all those underground scenes. So I remember seeing like a guy with a 9-inch nails, like NIN. It's like, what is that?
Right.
And like, hair.
Yeah.
And, like, the chain. He had like a nose ring, earring chain.
I always
thingy.
thought those were so dangerous.
I know. Yeah. So I saw some like, some industrial goth people too.
Yeah.
What is this? And I was so scared. I was like shaking. But at the same time, I knew I belonged there. I was like, okay, I think I'm like, this is like, because I thought it was really cool.
Right.
But I was also like very intimidated.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, it's kind of like watching a scary, like people who watch scary movies.
Yeah.
You get really obsessed with them. They scare you, but you want to see more of them and you want to feel scared. I really liked the way I felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I felt like I was like, this is something that I don't want to tell my parents.
Right. But you knew you wanted to be a part of it.
I wanted to be a part of it. But I still like, felt like, oh man, how can I be a part of this? I'm scared of everybody. I don't know what to do.
When did you start playing with your brothers?
Oh, that was much later in life. That was probably like 2006, 2007.
Yeah. Why didn't you start right away?
Because there's a significant age difference between all of us.
Yeah.
When I was going to shows and stuff, they were little kids. Like they were little.
How big's the gap between you?
The gap between me and Uriah is pretty significant. Let's see, what is it? How old is he now? He's 26. So it's like a 9-year gap between me and Uriah.
Yeah.
So like, or not even me and Jules, actually, there's a 9-year gap. And then between me and Uriah, it's even a bigger gap because he's the second youngest. So,
right.
So like, yeah, when I was doing my thing, when I was a teenager, those guys were little.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and my brother, there's a 6-year gap. And, now we both have our respective bands, but we never played music together. And people always were like, you guys must have jammed all the time. And I was like, hell no. Like, I was like, I felt like the 6-year gap was pretty significant because like he was in middle school. I was in high school. I had my group of friends. He didn't really learn how to play guitar until he was in high school, and I was already in college and moved out already.
Exactly. That's pretty much the same story with me. Like, all of my brothers followed in my footsteps in a way.
Yeah.
Much later when they came into their own. So like when they, when they reached 13 and 14. That's when they were getting into skateboarding and hanging out with kids that were into punk and going to 242. So it was like this conveyor belt of hackneys that were just going through the punk scene,
Right.
you know, and I was the first one.
Yeah.
And it was just like our little ducks on we're little ducks on the conveyor belt, you know, going through the same channels, just different eras of the scenes, you know.
And was Death kind of like the catalyst for you guys playing music together? Was like once you discovered that?
Because what happened was when Julian, he went traveling for a little bit. He got in with some of the crusties.
Right.
Like Julian, he was like vegan straight edge for a little bit.
Sure.
He was like the Earth Crisis and all that stuff.
Right.
Vegan straight edge friends, which is really funny because all of us like kind of grasped onto different parts of the underground scene.
Yeah.
And like, so Jules's thing was at the time was like vegan straight edge, and then he like kind of morphed into like more crusty punk. So all of his friends were like crusty punks,
right,
and traveling, and he ended up going to Oakland for a little while just to like hang out and like, you know, be a punk.
Yeah.
And that's when he found out about like what my dad and uncles were doing, because he had a bunch of friends that were record collectors, and they like had all these weird 7 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess like somebody knew about my dad and uncle's music, and Jules was like, wow, what is this? He like heard it, and he like, it's like, this sounds like the voices sound really familiar. How about this? And then he like asked my dad about it, and my dad's like, oh yeah, that's us.
It's so crazy that like, I mean, so before that, what did you know about your dad's like musical playing?
Well, our dad he's always been a reggae music. Like when we grew up, when I was a little kid, he was just in a reggae band called Lamb's Bread.
Right.
And that's what he did. That was like how he put food on the tables with the reggae band.
Yeah.
That my dad and uncle were in.
And
I do.
So that was what you knew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then when I was really little, when I was probably about like 4 or 5, I did remember their post-death band, Fourth Movement.
Mm-hmm.
That was when they stopped being Death, and then they became the Fourth Movement. It was like a gospel rock group.
Right.
So I remember that time when my Uncle Dave was still living in Burlington. Then he moved back. He moved back to Detroit. And then when he moved back, my father and uncle are like, whoa, like, what kind of, you know, it's just a bass player and a drummer.
Right. Reggae.
Like, hey, there's this new kind of music sweeping the nation called reggae music. And one of my dad's friends went to UVM, and he became like good friends with my dad and uncle. And they had like, they knew a promoter that was promoting at this venue called Memorial Auditorium in the 70s. And I guess like my dad and uncle got invited to see Bob Marley at the Memorial Auditorium, but they didn't know who he was yet.
Yeah.
So they didn't make it to the show. And then they get into reggae, and then they're like, oh my God, like we could have met the guy who like, you know,
made this so popular.
Yeah. And then he died, and it's like, oh man. So after all that, they just became diehard reggae guys.
Right.
How we grew up. We grew up on reggae music.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm surprised that Rum Francis didn't just turn out to be a reggae band.
I mean, we could if we really want to. If we want to make some money off some white folks, that's the best thing we can do right now.
Just make reggae.
We always joke about it. Like, yeah, man, let's just do a reggae band.
Well, you can. It just, you know, it just seems like, you know, not to take anything away from the reggae bands, but it seems like, you know, you can kind of just get one riff and do that for hours.
Yeah, I know. And then the extras start rolling in.
With, you know, well, when you guys started doing Rough Francis and you started, you know, playing shows, I don't know how much touring you guys have done, but like leaving Vermont, did you feel like things were different once you left Vermont?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We've played all over the country. Like we've done a West Coast tour, we've done the East Coast, we've done the Rust Belt, We've played Canada a bunch. We've been to a lot of wacky places, and like, yeah, it's a lot different than Vermont. Vermont's like a little, our Burlington especially is like a little bubble for us.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to be like, you can be like heroes in this small town. It's
Right.
like this big fish in a small pond
Yeah.
mentality here.
Yeah, totally.
But when you go outside of your comfort zone, yeah, it's definitely a lot different. We've been received really well in other places,
That's great.
and we've met some really cool friends. Like we got to meet like a lot of our heroes, our punk heroes, and like actually stay with some of them, which is like blowing my mind because I thought I would never be able to like hang out with Jello Biafra,
Sure,
stay at his house, and like just like we cooked them breakfast. It was really funny. Or like go to the Discord house. Like I never in my wildest dreams would ever think that I'd ever step foot in the Discord house.
right, right.
And that moment was so cool. And like I still like have dreams about it. Like I was like, was that real? Like, oh yeah, that happened. Because like when I first got into punk, I remember a good friend of mine when we were skateboarding, he had a Minor Threat CD.
Yeah.
Minor Threat discography CD.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just looking at that layout for hours, and just looking at all the pictures and trying to just like figure out like who these people were, who they were. Like I just didn't know like what they were doing at that moment because they were like Minor Threat was long gone then, even then,
Yeah,
like
totally.
from the early 80s. So it's like it was still kind of old.
Yeah.
It felt like looking at a Beatles record, I was like, whoa. And just like then actually going there and seeing some of the same stuff that I saw in those photos was really mind blowing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah,
it's
skateboard and everything was there. I was just like, whoa.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because looking at like I've the same thing, like looking at like some of these records, like the Minor Threat record, especially with like the sheep on it. I always will look at that and be like visually such like a great cover, like aesthetically, and you being a graphic designer, I look at that and I'm like, how much of this was intentional? Because there were really young kids putting this together, and it's just, I think even that is just mind blowing to me that, it looked so pro when they were so young, just putting out this thing, not even really knowing what they were doing.
I know. I think they were even gluing the sleeves together themselves.
Yeah.
For the first runs of the album.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure.
Yeah. Because like, Jeff Nelson, the drummer, like he's like one of my favorite designers, obviously. And like, I even like slipped some of that style into some of our layouts. I even showed Ian. I gave him a record and I was like, hey man, like, I just want to let you know, like, I totally stole this from you guys. He's like, oh, cool. He was like, really like, he's like, oh, that's awesome. It was like cool to be able to tell the guy. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm like copying your stuff. Like,
that's awesome.
He's like, ooh.
That's so good. That's awesome.
Ian was really, really, he was a gentleman and he was really nice. And we hung out with him for a good long time. And
had he heard the band before?
He knew about the Death Story because so this is really funny. So me and my friend Spencer, you know that band My Revenge?
Yeah.
Spencer from My Revenge, he's like one of my best friends.
Oh, nice.
I was actually the original drummer for My Revenge.
Oh, awesome. Sick.
Yeah. So like me and Spencer, like we've been on tour, like we've done a lot of crazy stuff together. We used to live together. And me and Spencer went to go see Henry Rollins at a college in Montpelier, Vermont.
Yeah.
We ended up talking to Henry at the end of the show because this is like right before the documentary was gonna come out.
Right.
And I wanted to thank Henry for being in the documentary. I was like, yeah, man, like this is my in to talk to Henry Rollins.
Yeah, totally. Use it.
So like I was talking to Henry and he was like, oh yeah, like I don't know if this is true, but my friend Ian, I'm like, and I'm like, oh yeah, Ian Mackay. He's like, yeah, Ian Mackay. He said that he found the Depth 7-inch for like 25 cents at a garage sale. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And he's like, yeah, you should call him and ask him about it. And then I ended up like, you know, emailing him, and we're about to go, like, this is like a little later, but we were going on this East Coast tour, and I connected with Ian over email, and he invited us down to the house, to the Discord house.
That's so awesome.
And he was just like, yeah, man, like Henry, I don't know, like he didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't find that record for 25 cents. Like, it was really funny. Like, hey, Rob, he like just, I don't know, like he got it wrong.
Yeah, totally. I love that he gets it wrong. He's like, but you should call him up and ask him about it.
I know, it was like something out of a punk rock fairy tale.
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah, absolutely.
you know, but that was kind of like the icebreaker for us talking. Was it's like, yeah, man, Henry said that you might have the 7-inch, and we're gonna be on tour, and like, yeah, and he's like, yeah, stop on by. Okay, cool. It's like, I guess we're going to the Discord house, guys.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's amazing. I've never been to that house before, but I don't even know. I would say to Ian, I'd just be like, hey, what's up? I'm just this dude. I just like your stuff.
Yeah, actually, Ian's a fan of reggae. He his favorite reggae artist is Ika Mouse.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, we talked about reggae because he used to be a stagehand at the 930 Club.
Yeah,
and he said like he used to love it when reggae shows happen because he loves reggae. Like, I mean, you can, like, some of the Fugazi stuff, there's definitely a lot of reggae influence in there.
Yeah, it's funny because Fugazi is definitely like one of my favorite bands, and
Yeah.
you know, I think it's amazing how he can go from like, he's just had so many like home runs in his career, not even trying. You know, it's just like it's wild to me. But I remember, I think it was in like the Foo Fighters like Sonic Highways thing that they did for HBO, where they went to different studios in DC. Ian was there, and Ian talked about how a lot of his, like, you know, one of his big influences before he, like, you know, started discovering other music was he liked Ted Nugent, like Ted Nugent's like live record, and he was like, yeah, like, you know, I just like, I think like, because that first record that he made, like, Ted Nugent's a pretty good guitar player, and like those riffs are like pretty awesome, and I can see and even like hear how, like, yeah, it would make sense. Like, Ian's guitar playing is almost like very like similar to that. It's definitely not like classic rock, but you can see that where it comes from. And, you know, Ted Nugent is not a cool person. We all know this, you know. But it's crazy how, you know, someone like Ian, who is probably the exact opposite of Ted Nugent, can be influenced by this guy from his music and guitar playing. It's almost like you can just learn so much just through music, I feel, you know?
Yeah. Because, yeah, sometimes, like, you're like, you know, especially when there's no internet or no television, you just like actually just hearing the music, and you don't even connect it to any person.
Right.
Like, you don't know the person who made it, but you just know the music.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like, yeah, when you can like just absorb music in that way, that's how people, you know, become like super influenced by stuff. And then they, it's like, yeah, this is like influenced me. And then you like learn about the person, you're like, oh crap, but the personality doesn't influence me, but the music does.
Right. You know, I mean, at the time, like, yeah, like you said, like there was no internet, like, you know, fucking Ted Nugent didn't have a TV show, you know, and like, but and like, the other thing I remember was Ian and saying that him and Henry discovered like Trouble Funk early on, and they wanted to go see Trouble Funk, and they were like, yeah, like we went to go see Trouble Funk, and we got in, they're like, we were the only white kids there, and everyone there was like, who the fuck are these kids, and why are they here? And they were like, we didn't give a shit. They're like, we just wanted to see Trouble Funk. And you know, it's like, it's shit like that I just feel is like so important and defines the course of like your life and how you think, especially early on, because you just stop caring about that stuff, you know, or it just it doesn't become something that you worry so much about. Yeah,
because I mean, that's kind of how I got into all this music. I just naturally liked aggressive music. And a lot of the bands they started getting into, I didn't know what they looked like. I didn't know like what their stances were on anything. I mean, some of the bands I did know, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I was going through a phase of like, it's like, oh crap, is this band racist? You know, I'd get the tape and look at the thank you lists and see like if they say anything or look at the lyrics.
Did you ever find any?
There's a few times I was disappointed in some stuff, but like it wasn't anything too crazy because like I didn't really like them anyway. Right. Like a good example was I really got into like the 80s youth crew thing for a while.
Yeah.
So I was like really into Gorilla Biscuit, Youth of Today, Bold, like all those bands. Right. And the funny thing about those bands, I feel like that's just like a weird phenomenon in itself because it's like these clean cut white kids that are wearing Nikes and like they look like army guys, right? But they're like vegetarian and they're singing about like all this like positive stuff. Yeah. It's kind of like very like military, but like, yeah, it was like hardcore military style.
Right. Right.
But like fun and positive, which is kind of a weird thing to, like, if you think about it, that's such a weird.
It's so weird.
In this genre.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I loved the music in it. And so I got into that. And I remember I just loved the music for some reason. And I got, remember that New York Hardcore the Way It Is comp?
Yes.
I remember like, you know, loving that comp. And there was like there's one song on there that already like kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Cause I was like learning about the whole white power movement in the punk scene. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of, you know, I learned about Screwdriver and a bunch of bands like that were kind of like sprinkled into the scene.
Yeah.
That like, I just knew to watch out for. Like I knew to like watch out for certain bands that like rep their stuff or cause you know, chances are they're probably like racist white power. So I remember seeing one of the bands thank Screwdriver in their thank you list. So I was like, oh, this band.
Such a dead giveaway.
Yeah. And I was like, why would Ray Capo let a band on his comp that's like friends with Screwdriver? And then it kind of like opened up a bunch of like conversations with myself about like the scene itself, about how racist it can be, and is it like okay for me to like certain bands, okay for me to not like certain bands.
It's so surprising. I mean, and that's the thing is I'm having those conversations even now, you know, like I did a post where I was like, I hope everyone's paying attention to the bands that are silent during this time, you know, because I was like, I think it speaks volumes to some bands that are silent during this time, because it doesn't take much to just be like, we stand with black people against this, you know, even if you don't do anything else, which they should, but like if you don't, it at least knows where you stand on issues. And
like you want things better, at least, you know, you want improvement.
Right. One band that I noticed hasn't posted anything, and you know, one of their members I'm friends with on just Facebook. I don't really know him personally, but I saw him posting a lot of like weird shit. Is like one of the dudes from Pennywise, and I was like, is Pennywise a racist band? And I was like, so I went to their page on like both of them, and I was like, this band has posted nothing about Black Lives Matter, and I was like, you know, I guess I just like didn't think about it, because like when you are like skating when you're in high school listening to Pennywise, you think bro hymns about you too, but apparently it might not be. You know.
Totally. And I feel like, you know, it just shows that this exposes all the privilege that there's a lot of white privileged musicians out there who you know, like especially in the suburban punk genre. Yeah, like that's a lot. I love a lot of that punk. Like suburban punk is like my jam, but like a lot of those kids were just privileged white kids that ended up getting really popular. Yeah. And like they're punk, but like at the same time, they're not that punk.
Right. But it's crazy too, though, because it's like, you're right, they're not that punk. But some of those bands came out of like the LA scene where they were like, yeah, it was so tough being punk back then. Like we had like cops would come to like our shows and like fight us and stuff like that. And it's like, well, if you know that, then like, how can you not even stand for this?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you know, I mean, Yeah, I mean, like LA was pretty rough, I heard, and um, but like you know, black people and other POCs deal with that just not looking like a punk too,
Right, just being a person. You
just being
know?
trying to like you know make it do something. But yeah, like I feel like the bands that are not saying anything, it's kind of like exposed. They're just exposing themselves,
Yeah.
uh, and like it's been really reassuring to like with because there's a few newer bands that I really like a lot, and they've said stuff, and I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah,
'Cause,
I love seeing that too. I'm just like, thank fucking God they said something, because
yeah,
it's like, it, I think especially for younger bands too. It's like how can you not? Like even like with Rebuilder, it was like one of those things like, like we're a people of color band. Like Brandon is black, I'm Hispanic,
yep,
and we have two white people in the band. And there's always a rotating cast of people coming in and out, and it's I'm glad that it's that way.
yeah,
I didn't choose it to be that way, but it's just me and Brandon grew up together and things like that. But it was one of those things that like when I saw the protests and the riots happening, I was like, I don't even know what to do. I don't want to go to a protest because there is still a pandemic outside and it's really
yep,
dangerous. But I'm glad people are going that feel that they want to go and express their right to protest. We have our T-shirts that say, Rebuild or Defend POC Punk, which we literally made over a year ago as like a tongue-in-cheek thing against like the Defend Pop Punk shirts, because I think
sure.
Daniel was saying, he was like, what I have the problem with those shirts is like, what is there to defend with pop punk? And I was like, you're right, there's nothing, absolutely not. He was like, we should make something say defend POC punk, and I was like, that would be funny. And we did. And so I have all the merch here in my house, and I was like, well, every single one of those t-shirts, all the proceeds just go to Black Lives Matters causes, because like I don't even feel good keeping the money from that shirt during this time. And I thought that maybe we would sell a couple t-shirts, and if that was it, then that's fine, because that would get donated. But
Yeah.
we've ran out of the shirt like 3 times now. We've raised over $1,000 to be donated.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was like every time it ran out, I would just up the numbers on it and say it's back in stock, and just tell the person making it, be like, all right, you add this to the order. But it's one of those things where it's like, it just instinctively, like in me, I felt like I was like, well, this is like the minimum I can even just do. Like I have to do something, because I can't just as a band just like sit back and watch this happen, not say anything at all. I think it's important to just let people know where you stand.
Because as performers, like if you like it or not, we influence other people. Like people who like our bands look up to us,
Right.
and they trust us to be like the voice that they don't have. Because like I feel like a lot of people use music and bands, especially punk bands, as like a way to like kind of like fire them up and get them motivated.
Totally.
So I feel like taking on that responsibility of like doing what you're doing is like awesome, because yeah, a lot of people look up to you,
Right.
and like like this is this guy, like he's Hispanic punk dude, like the only other guy I saw was like El Jefe, like this guy.
Right, totally.
Like it's like it's great, it's really inspiring to that younger kid to see you up there doing this kind of music.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
man,
I mean,
awesome.
I have to say, like, I think that I mean, just us doing that, just us playing music, and especially like punk music or rock music, I do think it's super important. I mean, I remember the first time I saw Rough Francis was at Tavern at the End of the World in Charlestown, when
Oh yeah.
Joe Boo was like, he'd been telling me for years, this is like pre the Death documentary or everything, but Joe Boo was like, you got to see this band, they're amazing. And like every time I'd see him, he's like, one day they're gonna come down, or we'll go up there, or we'll go see them. And I was like, yeah man, like anytime. And he brought me to that show, and I remember like really not knowing anything about you guys, but watching you guys play. And it's one of those things where like watching Rough Francis play, you can't help but want to like move and like dance to your music. It's just like,
Oh, man, thanks. Yeah.
like the room, it would just felt like the room just exploded. I was like, and I like literally for weeks after that, I was telling people, I was like, you got to see this fucking band. Like it was the same thing that Joe had told me. But the thing is that, it's like, there's people of all races and of all colors at your shows in the room, and we're just being like, this is awesome. And even if you're not even paying attention to the words or anything that you're saying at that show, or like your lyrics, you can't help but just feel like you're a part of something in that moment in time. And I think that those are the important things that make you maybe not be fucking racist in your life, because you're like, exactly. I saw this band, there was a bunch of black dudes in it and they were fucking sick, so maybe I don't hate black people. You know?
Exactly. I mean, that's at the very least, that's the reaction we want. That's yeah, that's the thing. Like existing and just being there is like it carries a lot of weight. So it's awesome that I'm proud to be in the band that I'm in, and I'm proud of all the other like Black and POC punk artists and like trans and queer, and like I love that they, because you can tell your story the best.
Yeah.
If you have like a story, you're marginalized and you have a story to tell, the best way to do it is just like yell it into a mic in front of a band.
Absolutely. It just, it feels better, and I don't know, there's something about being able to just like, about punk being able to just being, anyone can do it, and that can be good or bad. But I think, the magic about that is that you can tell your story, whatever it is, through that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thanks for being on the show. And, I think your new record is sick, and I encourage people to pick it up. It's called, is it Panthers in the Night?
Actually, the new album's called Urgent Care.
Urgent Care.
Yeah.
Right.
But we did do Panthers in the Night is just a single that we kind of throw up there. It's been up and down.
Yeah.
Like we'll put it up and then we'll take it away, and then we'll put it up again and we'll take it away.
It's very relevant. And I mean, I don't know a time where, Rough Ranch really wasn't relevant. But yeah, Panthers Night is a great song. I saw that video. It's awesome. And yeah, Urgent Care is a great record. I think you did a really good job on the artwork on it too. It looks really good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And we're going to try to put that on vinyl soon. So
I will be the first in line to buy one.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll keep you posted.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and keep playing and stay safe.
Yeah, same to you.
All right, see ya, man.
All right, take care.